At Team Toyota, they've been selling and servicing new and used Toyotas in your community for over 50 years, and you can reserve your next new Toyota with them today. You'll get a realistic timeline, and even in this crazy market, they won't charge you over MSRP. Or don't wait at all. With over 75 certified Toyotas, including a bunch of RAV4 and Highlanders, you can drive one home today. And you can always trust them to maintain your current vehicle. Their service and collision centers are high-tech, comfortable, and will save you time and money. Team Toyota can help you go anywhere you want, but they'll always be your hometown team. Just visit teamtoyota.net and choose from 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton. Hey folks, welcome to the Phillies Talk Podcast presented by Team Toyota. I'm Corey Seidman. He's Ricky Bottalico here in the middle game of a 3-game series between the Phillies and the Nationals. As the Phils have reached the official midpoint of their season, Rick, 81 games in, they're 43-38, which means they're on pace for 86 wins, which is one fewer than they had last season. Just your overall assessment of how the Phillies have played in this first half, where they are in the wild card race, 2.5 games behind the Giants, looking up at several teams. And where do you think this team is capable of getting?
Wow. Let's start with the division. I think the division is a little bit out of hand. I mean, the Braves are on pace for 108 wins. I mean, that's no joke. That team is just ridiculous right now. They are what we thought the Phillies would be. I really believe that. Hitting the ball out of the ballpark at will. I mean, they could be on pace for 5 guys hitting 30 home runs. So I'm not necessarily looking at the division. The wild card is right there. Either wild card, if you really want to look at it that way. I think they could jump in pretty much to any spot in that type of situation. I think what we've seen is kind of the same thing as 2022, a team that struggled to find themselves early on in the season, but then once they started clicking, the wins just started rolling in. And I guess it's good and bad. I guess the disappointing part is when you looked at this team, you wanted them to be the Braves. You wanted them to be on pace for 100 wins at the midway point. And what we got was a team that struggled early, and they played better as time went on. And, you know, when you really look at this team, it just seems as though, I mean, there's so many different things. The pitching is first and foremost. The starting pitching has stepped up immensely in the last month. And when that happens, it makes it easier on everybody. Obviously, with the hitters, you don't have to score as many runs. And that's been a little bit of an issue for the Phillies, is scoring a bunch of runs, which is a little surprising to me. So I think you put everything together. You have the pitching staff now that you thought you would have at the beginning of the year, at least 1 through 4. And even Christopher Sanchez is throwing the ball well in the 5 spot right now. So I just think they're going in the right direction. I guess that would be the best way to put it. I feel like they're headed in the right direction. You know, obviously there's some guys on this club where you need them to elevate. And I'm sure we're going to go over them, but I mean, you look at Harper, you need him to elevate. You thought
figuratively and literally. They need him to elevate figuratively and literally. They need him to loft the ball. You know, he's hitting the ball hard, but he's hitting, you know, line drives or ground balls up the middle. Hasn't homered now in 131 plate appearances, the longest drought of his career.
Was that correct, what I heard the other day? 7-degree launch angle he had as an average. Isn't that kind of low?
He's not hitting the ball in the air nearly as much. There have been, I don't know if it's quite that low, but yeah, there have been readings on Harper that have just been shocking in comparison to what we're usually seeing. I mean, the guy's on base percentage is like identical to his slugging percentage right now.
Yeah, and I think what's happened is that he's gotten into his head a little bit. I really believe it started, 2 home series back. He hit a ball to left field that he thought was gone, stood at home plate, thought it was gone, and then a ball to center field he thought was also gone in the same series, and both of them were outs, fly outs. And I think that started getting in his head. And when that happens, you tend to start pulling off the baseball. You want to get in pull mode. You want to hit the ball deep all the time to right field because you don't think the power's there, but it will be. I mean, I just think it's one of those things he's got to get back to thinking about up the middle and really block off the left field line, the right field line. Think about hitting the ball in the gaps to right center and left center. And then when you start elevating, those balls go out of the ballpark.
Yeah, and I mean, Harper hasn't been like terrible. I mean, he hit a 2-run single that won the Phillies the game a couple nights ago. He also hit a 398-foot fly out to the wall and center at Wrigley Wednesday night. So, I mean, he's getting close. He's just not able to get that like extra 10 feet of distance that would make all the difference. And I think, when you look at what a Harper slump looks like compared to like what a JT Realmuto slump looks like, you see the difference of the value of walking, right? Like Harper has a 365 on base percentage over the last month, pretty much, which most players aren't capable of doing even when they're going well, much less when they're slumping. Whereas guys like JT or Trey Turner, when they're not going well, they're not walking enough to produce as much value as Harper does. And JT, it's just been such a hot and cold season. Weak game for JT on Friday night in the series opener, tapped out weekly, representing the go-ahead run late. He had that at bat where he popped out the second with runners on the corners and 1 out. There have been too many times this season where it seems like a guy in a very important lineup spot has just been going south, and he seems to come up in all these run-scoring opportunities. Like it was Trey Turner earlier this season. Now it's Realmuto. But for a streaky player like him, this has been as streaky as any season we've seen from Rhys Hoskins, even in terms of what JT's done in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, you think about JT before that Arizona series was kind of struggling. All of a sudden, he got into that series and he was hitting. Talk about extra base hits. That was a series for the ages. I mean, the way he was swinging the bat there, and then all of a sudden it disappeared again. That to me is a little concerning in the sense that I'm watching him now. And it's almost like he's swinging at everything. I mean, in last night's game, it was a 1-run game. You had runners at first and third. There was 1 out. And he got a pitch in on his hands that he swung at on an 0-0 count. I mean, to me, it's about being disciplined up at the plate. You let that pitcher come to you. He's the one that's in trouble, not you. You let him come to you. Let him make a mistake out over the middle of the plate. Don't help him out. I mean, you gave him a gift. Swinging a pitch in on your hands, 0-0 count. To me, that's giving him a gift, and that's also telling me if I'm a pitcher, I know he's not seeing the ball well. He's not picking up the spin out of the hand. So that obviously is one of his problems right now.
Yeah, and, there's just too much aggressiveness in this Phillies lineup sometimes. Like, there was an at-bat Turner had late last night in the series opener against the Nationals where, 0-0 count, there's a slider that's like 2 feet off the plate that he expands and he swings at. Now he's down 0-1. Then he sees a splitter that's off the plate inside and he fouls it off. Now he's down 0-2 on 2 balls. And it's a high-pressure spot, high-leverage spot for the pitcher, and all of a sudden now he has a major advantage over Trey Turner. There's so many guys in this lineup who have that sort of mentality that they want to be aggressive. Castellanos, Turner, JT, Alec Boehm. So that's why when you think about like additions the Phillies might want to make going into the trade deadline, to me, they need power and they need another hitter who controls the strike zone, a plate selection type of guy.
Have you noticed this? I mean, there have been games where they looked abysmal early on, and then all of a sudden somebody has one good quality at bat, and then everybody kind of falls into play and they come back and win the ball game. We've seen this 4, 5, 6 times this year, and that just goes to show that maybe they do learn from the guy in front of them. But when you have a guy going up there swinging at first pitch, second pitch, and then the at bat's over, I mean, that takes away your thought process as a guy that's on deck or watching from the dugout. I just think they could be a little bit more selective. There's no doubt about that. And to be swinging at pitchers' pitches, especially when you're in good counts, that's one thing we've seen them do pretty consistently all season. And that's why you see the numbers you do with runners in scoring position. I mean, their overall numbers, I don't believe they look terrible. But the one thing is that they'll have a game where they're 10 for 17. And then they'll have 2 or 3 games where they're 1 for 8, 1 for 9, 1 for 8. I mean, that's inconsistency to me, and they got to be better with the runners in scoring position.
Yeah, no doubt about that. We were talking about the Braves earlier. I mean, I totally agree with you. The division's already out of reach. July 1st, the division's out of reach. I mean, the Braves have hit 67 more home runs than the Phillies this season. They have nearly hit twice as many home runs as the Phillies. So when you think about a lineup that can hurt you at every pocket, right? The Braves can kill you at the top with Acuna. The middle of their order, they have Riley and Matt Olson. The bottom of their order,
28.
Yeah, hit 2 yesterday. The bottom of their order, they have Orlando Arcia and Michael Harris, who are all-stars, all-star players. Eddie Rosario is a dangerous power bat. Ozuna. So literally 1 through 9, that's the best lineup in baseball. However, we also saw last season when the Phillies faced the Braves in the playoffs that anything can happen in a short series. So it doesn't, just because the Braves are so much better, doesn't mean that they're going to go farther than the Phillies this season. But No, when you're looking at the true talent levels of these teams, clearly the Braves are not just the class of the NL East. They might be the best team in all of baseball.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely one of the best teams in baseball, if not the best in baseball. Like you just said, this is how you want to be perceived if you're the Phillies. That 1 through 9 is deadly, that they can come after you with everybody in that lineup. And I think at certain points during the season, maybe I would say a handful of games, you might have said that about the Phillies, but they've had somebody in a slump pretty much all season. There's been weak links with it within the lineup at times during the season. That's something that you hope kind of straightens itself out, and that you have a month period where everybody's hitting the ball well, or at least they're doing their job. You can't have just a handful of those. And the Braves don't have many games where they're not driving the baseball, and that's scary to me. This is a different Braves team than last year. I think we both agree on that. This is a much better team, and I think what it's going to come down to is how healthy their pitching is going into the playoffs. But here's the other kicker. They're going to have plenty of time, most likely. If they keep playing the way they are right now, they're going to have plenty of time to figure out their rotation and get everybody healthy for the playoffs. So that's a scary thing if I'm going in the National League.
Well, in the wild card race, the Phillies played so well in the month of June, going 18-8, but the 4 best records in all of Major League Baseball in the month of June belong to the Phillies and the 3 teams they're chasing. The Braves went 21-4, the Marlins went 19-8, Phillies 18-8, Giants 18-8. So the Phillies are 2.5 games behind San Francisco for that final wild card spot. The Dodgers are in the wild card picture. You'd figure that they're going to make the playoffs. One of the Dodgers or Diamondbacks is going to win the division. The other team is going to get in via the wild card. They're just both so good. Diamondbacks legitimately have a really good lineup. They have enough starting pitching. But the Marlins, I think we're at a point in the season where you have to take the Marlins seriously. I mean, that's probably the best rotation in all of the National League.
And Alcantara hasn't been pitching well.
Right. And Luis Ariz, obviously there's all the craze surrounding Luis Ariz. And then Jorge Soler. I mean, Jorge Soler looks like he's on pace for like 40 homers and 120 RBIs or something. So
in that place too.
Yeah, in that big ballpark. So that team to me has staying power. The Giants, though, are the team that you're going to be chasing probably all throughout the second half. The Phillies are a half game ahead of the Brewers, and then the next closest team is 3 games behind them. So really it's like a 5-team race. The 3 teams that are currently occupying those spots, plus the Phillies and Brewers.
Well, the Brewers are one of those teams you thought would just fade. I really did. I thought they were going to be a fader this year. I thought they were going to disappear. But you look at the Reds now. My goodness. They may be the most fun team to watch in baseball right now, just because they have mixed young with now Joey Votto and India. I mean, these guys are playing baseball and they're having fun doing it. And they're a team to watch right now. And I think they're a team to be a little leery of, to say the least. And thank goodness the Phillies are done with them. I will say that. The Phillies got done with them early on in the season. So that's a good thing for them, because this is a completely different team than they faced early on in the season.
I remember people saying like the first couple of weeks of the season, can you even name any of the starting players on the Cincinnati Reds team? But now look at them. Now you can name a lot of them.
It's strange, isn't it?
Yeah, there's all that hype that's been surrounding Ellie De La Cruz, but like Matt McLean, another young player, hitting 320 and doing things in the middle infield with power, and Spencer Steer. Yeah, that's a good team. And all these teams in the NL Central have taken turns atop the division, really, except the Cardinals. Like the Reds have been there, the Pirates have been there, the Cubs have been
there, for crying out loud.
Yeah, and now the Pirates look like a cellar dweller team.
They're starting to fade.
Yeah, the Phillies are going to face them pretty soon.
You knew that was going to happen, though.
You can catch all this sports action and more at Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Whether it's the money line or the pass line, there's something for everyone, including a great sports book. Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Philly loves a winner. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. So, Rick, the Phillies were carried by pitching in June, the middle of their rotation in particular. Ranger Suarez and Taijuan Walker, the Phillies went a combined 9-2 in their starts. Suarez had a 1.08 ERA. Walker had a 1.50 ERA. First 2 months of the season, the middle of the rotation was one of the biggest weaknesses. The fact that Suarez wasn't healthy and Walker was going like 3 innings into games. Then in the month of June, it was their biggest strength. Did you see anything in the month of June that makes you believe that this wasn't just a hot month, that these guys can carry this forward the rest of the way?
Well, in all reality, things got better for Taijuan Walker when he changed his windup. He simplified everything. I mean, really, he's just hit your balance point and go now. And the one thing about Taijuan Walker that I'm watching, which is fun to watch because he actually uses his split like a fastball. I think that's fair to say. And he was not locating that pitch early on in the season. All of a sudden, he simplified his windup and everything kind of fell into place. And now what we're seeing is him using other secondary pitches, which to me, that's what it becomes, because now you're fooling hitters without even having to do anything. As long as you could throw your pitches for strikes, he's going to be good. And Ranger, I hate to tell you, Ranger right now, he would be my number one starter in the playoffs. I would not have any, I wouldn't even think twice. I would put Ranger on the mound in game one because I think he's got his stuff together. I think he goes out there, he knows exactly what he wants to do to each hitter, never gets rattled, that's for sure. And to me, he may be the best guy for the job right now. And I would actually, I'd probably go him, Wheeler, and Taijuan Walker right now. And I know Aaron Nola is going to be great. We know this. He's got good stuff. He's got the pitches, but there's been so much behind him right now. The pitch clock, everything, throwing the balls away. Just worry about what you're doing, the job in hand. And with him, with runners on base, it's like, I mean, just cover your eyes because you never know what's going to happen when Nola gets runners on base. And he's got to be better than that if he wants to be a top line starter. That's my opinion about all the pitchers.
I watch a lot of games in other markets. I'm like a baseball junkie. When I'm not covering a game, I'm watching like 4 to 10 games a night, really legitimately. And I haven't seen any pitcher in all of baseball who's been more affected by the pitch clock than Aaron Nola. You know, in terms of the comments he's made, in terms of the incident he had a few weeks ago with the umpires throwing the baseballs out, in terms of the issues he's had with runners in scoring position when things speed up on him. We're several months into this now, and you'd figure he'd be farther along now in September than he is in July 1st, and he'd be farther in July 1st than he was in spring training. But yeah, right now, he does not look like one of their best 3. That could change at any point, obviously. But the other part of that is we talked so much about how badly the Phillies needed starting pitching the first 2 months of the season. Right now, I would think their starting pitching is the envy of like 26 other teams in Major League Baseball. You know, the Marlins, like we said, probably have the best rotation in the NL. The Mariners have a very good rotation over in the AL. But how many teams across baseball have 4 guys that you can count on right now to deliver quality starts? Not many.
Limited number.
Yeah. And so like pitching staffs we're used to seeing that are like very successful, like the Dodgers have been ravaged by injuries. The Braves have been ravaged by injuries. So like when trade season, it's right around the corner here. You know, we're a month out from the trade deadline. For a while, we thought, okay, it needs to be starting pitching. Right now, I don't really see a drastic need for starting pitching. Maybe pick up like a Syndergaard-esque depth piece, but the Phillies have 4 guys they'd feel comfortable using in a playoff series already on their roster. So really, you're just looking for someone to fill it out. And if Christopher Sanchez can keep doing for 3 or 4 more starts what he's done the last 3, do you even really need to go get that guy? Maybe your main focus becomes adding a bat.
Where is the bat going to play is the question. I understand the right-handed, left-handed, but Schwarber's until Harper can get on the field, Schwarber's going to play left field.
Yeah.
And he's becoming a little bit of an issue out there.
Yeah, he's a liability.
Field. Obviously, you need his bat in the lineup. See, there's where you run into problems. And if the Phillies are going to go out and get somebody, it's probably going to be, I would assume, a right-handed hitting outfielder.
And it would probably be a rental because their outfield is set moving forward. Like if you have Harper back in right field next season, you already have Harper, Marsh, Castellanos. So, yeah, I would think it would be a corner outfielder rental. But like you said, all of this is contingent on Harper playing first base.
And by the way, what are your concerns? Are you concerned with him playing first? Because let me just say it this way. I know he's taking ground balls. I know he's trying to do the fundamental part of the game right now. But when you get in there and everything speeds up on you, the game completely changes. I understand Bryce Harper. Yes, he's a superstar. He could do everything. I think that's what people think, that he's just going to step out there, be an all-star. I hope that happens. But I know people also say, well, it's first base. How hard could it be?
It's hard.
There's a lot of footwork involved.
Yeah.
There's a lot of thought process that's involved when you're over there at first base. I mean, it's not as easy as just jumping out there and fielding the ground ball and the game's over. It's not that simple.
Right. I mean, to think about all the nuances at first base, like holding a runner on and knowing when to move back into your natural position, or throws or cutoffs. There are a lot of things. And Rob Thompson's cautioned that it's not going to be perfect from day one, that there are going to be some growing pains. And the first baseman touches the ball like on almost every play. So it's important. But I would just say that it can't be worse than the defensive liability Kyle Schwarber's become in left field, because Schwarber, who made another two-base error last night, if you look at defensive runs saved or outs above average, he has been literally the worst defensive player at any position in all of baseball this season. So, I mean, if Harper is just passable at first base, you would figure that would be a drastic defensive improvement overall, because instead of having Schwarber in left field, you probably have Christian Pache or Brandon Marsh in left field, unless you then make a trade for a better hitter, and then you can optimize for offense rather than defense.
And then your outfield defensively is good.
Yeah.
It goes from bad to good.
Yeah.
With one move. And
one thing though that I don't think is going to happen. I keep getting this question from fans on Twitter. I don't know who started this idea or why it's become such a popular. The Phillies are not getting Goldschmidt or Arenado for Alec Bohm and Mick Abel. That is not getting you an MVP caliber player. You're not getting Goldschmidt or Arenado unless you're trading probably Andrew Painter. It's just the reality of it. So I think
Phillies aren't doing that.
Yeah. And so I think the Phillies fans that have in their minds that they might be able to get that kind of guy, I wouldn't put my eggs in that basket leading into.
That's because of where we live, Corey. We think that everybody wants to give us stuff for nothing. And it's just not the case.
All you got to do is put yourself in the perspective of the other team. Like, why would they punt on this season, next season, the year after, unless they're just bowled over, right?
Well, it's a big salary. There's not a lot of teams that are going to take that for this year and next year. That's first and foremost. And when you look at position-wise, the Phillies could really use a first baseman. I mean, so I guess it's the logical thing to do is say, oh, the Phillies are the place where he's going, but not when you don't have enough to give back.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, the Phillies do have some interesting players that they could dangle in trades. Like they have, Griff McGarry couldn't be the centerpiece of a deal for a superstar, but maybe he does. Maybe a guy like that could intrigue a team that has a productive corner outfielder. So
he could be a second or third guy in a bigger trade, I think.
Yeah. And I don't mean to single him out in particular. I'm just saying that there's like different tiers of Phillies prospects, and they're not going to trade away those top guys, I don't believe, because again, this is another year where you're not going to win the division. So you don't want to sell everything to, potentially miss the playoffs or be in a short series.
Well, I would think two guys that are close, that are untouchables, would have to be Painter and Abel. I don't think they're touchable. I don't think anybody can come and get them.
Yeah. Well, the trade market, we saw the first move yesterday. Aroldis Chapman was dealt to the Rangers. The Royals sent him to the Rangers. So that was like kind of the first domino to fall. And we're going to see movement all throughout the month of July, you would think. The Phillies have 2 series left after this national series before the All-Star break. They have Tampa and Miami. And they need to get Bryce Harper at first base after the All-Star break, just because it will show them what their priorities should be, leading into the deadline.
And you'll have a good 2 weeks before the deadline. So, I mean, that'll get him enough games where you'll know is he going to be adequate at first base or not.
Right. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this Phillies Talk podcast. The Phillies are looking to win their 8th out of 9 series as they finish up with the Nationals this weekend. And then they're off Monday before a week in Florida leading into the All-Star break. Thanks a lot for listening to the Phillies Talk podcast. He's Ricky. I'm Corey. Catch you later in the week.